Chinese accent in his moanings. It was now 2:58 in the morning. He'd been watching television for 7 hours. The binge had started with an episode of Ancient Predators featuring Megalodon, the super shark terror of the ancient seas. Then came Cro-Magnon versus Neanderthal, the story of how these early humans parted as cousins on the African plains, then re-met as strangers in Europe, only to begin a contest of genocide. Cro-Magnon had slaughtered without mercy, leaving famished Neanderthal orphans staring out from French caves into a blizzard, whose screaming whiteness, Jim knew, was that of total erasure. He was half French-Canadian and learned from the narrator that he carried Neanderthal DNA within him. He was descended from these orphans. Feeling their doom as his own, he'd begun crying tears of desolation, and then, unable to bear these, he'd hit pause with his grease-slicked thumb, freezing the screen on the tiny Neanderthal faces. For 10 minutes he lay trembling, muttering, "Oh, God," over and over, until Netflix, greedy for its own bandwidth, reset to the main menu, casting its red glow over him and his guard dogs. Identical twin, steel-toothed Rottweilers who both answered to Jophiel. Their name was shared for the sake of efficiency and emergency, so that if one of Jim Carrey's many enemies broke into the house and he had only seconds to act, he could summon both with a breath. Fearing this was the moment when he would discover his own long-standing non-existence, questioning even the value of an existence as part of a species forever looping between horror and heartache, he wondered if the latest viral news story vexing his publicists was right. Had he actually died while snowboarding in Zermatt? He'd seen a YouTube video about how time behaves strangely in death, your final seconds distending, yielding rich washes of experience. What if he had died in recent days, arriving not in a hell or a heaven, but rather a bed-bound purgatory? He'd heard stories about the Los Angeles morgue, bored attendants taking gross pictures of the famous fallen, selling them to TMZ for down payments on houses in the valley. He flipped to YouTube, whose algorithms, like reading his mind, offered a montage of celebrity death photos. A shot of John Lennon, face puddled on a gurney, splayed out for the crowd. If they could do this to John Lennon. His mind now conjured an image of his own lifeless form, swollen and foul, the morgue goons standing above him, cameras blazing. Fuck, he breathed, unsure if he'd breathed it or not. He'd gone to the bathroom, trying to reclaim existential certainty with a warm rush of urine through his middle-aged urethra. His heart was racing. What if it failed in his sleep and they found him in the morning, caked in his own excrement? What if the entire flight of paranoia that had brought him to this moment of feared death was a premonition of a future death? The Zermatt snowboarding disaster, just fate's deft misdirection? No. If death should come, he'd look his best. Crevice as clean as a whistle. Thus resolved, he'd sat on his Japanese toilet and evacuated his bowels, wiped himself, and hopped in the shower, thoroughly sponging the orifice, then drying and powdering himself. He moved to the vanity mirror and kept going, trimming his wiry eyebrows, plucking the wolf hairs from his ears, rubbing bronzer across his forehead, his neck, around his clavicles in a broad swoop, so he looked like a Grecian bust. Now he was ready for the boys at the morgue. Here was a great star, they'd say, a box office.